Grandma, I'm locked in. I'm thirsty and hungry, my 7-year-old granddaughter whispered over the phone, and her trembling voice pierced my chest like a chilling dagger. The words came out choppy, almost inaudible, as if she was afraid someone else might hear her. Sophia, my little one, my darling granddaughter. She sounded so fragile that my hands began to shake while holding the receiver. Grandma, please come, she repeated in a broken thread of a voice, and I could hear the sound of her rapid breathing on the other end of the line. The phone almost slipped from my grasp as I tried to process what I had just heard. It was past midnight. The rain was beating violently against the windows of my small house in Queens, New York, and the wind was howling as if predicting a tragedy. My heart was pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears, and a feeling of absolute panic took hold of every fibre of my being. Sophia had never called me this late, much less with that desperate voice that I couldn't get out of my head. The line crackled with static, but I could perfectly hear every muffled whimper that came from her throat. Grandma, I can't get out of the room, she continued sobbing, and I could hear her trying to stifle her cries. Mom and Hank left and locked the door. I'm very thirsty, Grandma, and my stomach hurts. Her words dug into my soul like knives, and I felt the blood turn to ice in my veins. Diane, my own daughter, had locked her 7-year-old child in as if she were an animal. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, but Sophia's broken voice was too real to be a nightmare. My knees trembled, and I had to lean against the wall to keep from collapsing. How long have you been locked in there, my love? I managed to ask with a choked voice, trying to stay calm so I wouldn't scare her more. Since they left this morning, Grandma, they didn't give me breakfast, and I only drank water from the bathroom because I was so thirsty. My stomach clenched with pain and rage at hearing those words. 12 hours. My 7-year-old granddaughter had been locked in for 12 hours without food, abandoned by her own mother. Tears began to stream down my cheeks as I gripped the receiver tightly, as if I could transmit all my love through the phone line. Listen to me closely, Sophia, I said, trying to sound calm, though my voice was shaking with fury. Grandma is coming right now. Stay near the phone and don't open the door to anyone but me. Do you understand? Yes, Grandma, she murmured in a voice so tiny it broke my heart into 1,000 pieces. Without wasting another second, I hung up the phone and ran to my bedroom to find my car keys. My hands were shaking so much I could barely hold them, but the adrenaline gave me strength I didn't know I had. I put on the first jacket I found and ran out into the torrential rain that was falling over the city like tears from the sky. The icy wind hit my face as I opened the car door, and my numb fingers struggled to turn the ignition. Diane's house was 20 minutes from mine, but that night it felt like it was on another planet. The streets were deserted, barely lit by the yellowish light of the street lamps that flickered weakly in the darkness. As I drove at full speed through the drenched streets, I couldn't stop thinking about Sophia's voice. How had my daughter come to be the kind of mother who locks in her own child? Where had I failed as a mother to raise someone capable of such cruelty? The questions tortured me as the raindrops hit the windshield like bullets. Diane's house appeared before my eyes like a sinister shadow outlined against the black sky. All the windows were dark, and the front yard looked abandoned, with overgrown grass and dry leaves scattered everywhere. It was as if the house itself had died inside, just like my daughter's heart. I parked the car in front of the house and ran out into the rain that soaked me in seconds. The cold seeped into my bones, but nothing mattered more than getting to Sophia. My feet splashed in the puddles as I ran towards the front door, and the sound of water hitting the pavement mixed with the frantic beating of my heart. I rang the doorbell desperately. Once, twice, 3 times, but only the empty echo from inside the house answered me. Of course, no one was home. Diane and Hank had left, leaving my granddaughter locked in like an animal. I tried turning the knob of the front door, but it was locked. My hands trembled as I searched my purse for the emergency key Diane had given me years ago. The key turned in the lock with a metallic click that resonated in the nighttime silence. I opened the door and entered the house, submerged in a total darkness that smelled of dampness and neglect. The air was stale, as if no one had opened a window in days. I fumbled for the light switch, and when the living room lit up, what I saw made my stomach turn. The house was an absolute disaster. There were dirty dishes piled up on the dining room table, with food scraps that were already beginning to rot. The sofa was covered in thrown-off clothes, and on the floor were empty beer cans and ashtrays overflowing with cigarette butts. It was as if Diane and Hank had stopped being responsible adults and had become irresponsible teenagers. "Sophia, it's Grandma!" I shouted as I ran down the hallway toward the bedrooms. My voice broke with emotion when I heard her answer from the back of the house. "Grandma, I'm here." Her voice sounded so weak and distant that I had to hold back the tears so I wouldn't collapse right there. I ran to her room and found the door closed with a padlock on the outside. A damn padlock, as if my granddaughter was a prisoner in her own house. My hands shook with rage as I looked for something to break it with. I found a hammer in the garage, and I ran back to free my little one. The metal of the padlock snapped after 3 solid blows, and when I opened the door, my heart shattered. Sophia was sitting in a corner of her bed, curled up like a wounded little animal, with her pink dress dirty and wrinkled. Her hair was tangled, and her eyes were swollen from crying so much. Her lips were dry and cracked, and when she saw me, she launched herself into my arms with desperate force. "Grandma, I thought you weren't going to come," she sobbed against my chest while I hugged her with all the strength I had. Her small body trembled like a leaf, and I could feel how thin she was, as if she had lost weight in the last few days. My poor little granddaughter had lived a nightmare that no child should ever experience. "I'm here now, my love. It's all over," I whispered in her ear as I stroked her tangled hair. I rocked her in my arms, as I had when she was a baby, trying to convey all the security and love she hadn't received from her own mother. Her tears soaked my jacket, but nothing in the world mattered more than comforting her. The room was dim, barely lit by the light coming in from the hallway. I could see an empty glass of water on her nightstand, and some toys scattered on the floor, as if she had tried to entertain herself during the long hours of confinement. The window was securely locked, turning the room into a true prison. "Are you hungry, sweetheart?" I asked in a gentle voice as I pulled her back slightly to look into her eyes. Her brown eyes, just like mine, looked at me with a mixture of relief and sadness that broke my soul. "Yes, Grandma, I'm very hungry. I only had a piece of toast yesterday," she murmured in a voice hoarse from crying so much. Yesterday. My granddaughter had last eaten more than 24 hours ago. The rage I felt toward Diane was so intense that I had to take a deep breath to keep from exploding in front of Sophia. How could a mother be so cruel to her own daughter? What kind of monster locks up a 7-year-old child without food or water? "Let's go to the kitchen, my love. Grandma is going to make you something delicious," I said, trying to sound cheerful, though I was boiling with fury inside. I took her hand and we walked together toward the kitchen, where the mess was even worse than in the living room. The sink was full of dirty dishes with rotten food, and flies were buzzing around the waste. I opened the refrigerator and found some eggs, a little milk that was still good, and a few slices of ham. It wasn't much, but enough to make her some scrambled eggs that would help her regain her strength. While I cooked, Sophia sat in a chair and watched me silently, as if she couldn't believe that someone was finally worrying about her. "Tell me, sweetheart, How long have Mom and Hank been locking you in? I asked her very carefully as I whisked the eggs in a bowl. I didn't want to pressure her, but I needed to know the truth of what had been happening in that house. Sophia lowered her gaze and played with her fingers before answering. For many days, Grandma. Sometimes they lock me in when they go out at night, and other times when they bring friends home. They say I bother them too much and that they need privacy. Her innocent words revealed a horrible reality that made me clench my teeth with anger. A 7-year-old child doesn't bother anyone, except parents who have completely lost their way. And what about school, my love? Have you been to class? I continued asking as I served the scrambled eggs onto a clean plate I found after searching through the mountain of dirty dishes. I haven't been for a week, Grandma. Mum says I'm sick, but I feel fine. I'm just hungry and sleepy all the time. 1 week without school. Diane had been lying to the school authorities while keeping Sophia a prisoner in her own home. This was no longer just negligence. It was systematic child abuse that needed to be reported immediately. But first, I had to make sure my granddaughter was safe. Eat slowly, sweetheart. Don't hurt yourself, I said as I placed the plate in front of her. Sophia devoured the eggs as if she hadn't eaten in weeks, and she asked for a glass of water that she drank in a single gulp. Seeing my own granddaughter in such need filled me with a steely determination I hadn't felt in years. While she ate, I walked to the kitchen window and looked out at the deserted street. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still black and menacing. I knew Diane and Hank would return at some point, and when they did, they would have to face me. This time, I wasn't going to let them hurt my granddaughter anymore. After Sophia finished eating, I took her to the bathroom so she could take a warm shower. Her little body was dirty and smelled as if she hadn't bathed in days. As I filled the tub, she stood at the door, watching me with those sad eyes that broke my soul. "Grandma, can I stay with you tonight?" she asked in a voice so small that I had to crouch down to hug her. "Of course, my love. You're going to stay with me for as long as necessary," I promised her as I checked the water temperature with my hand. "No one is going to hurt you ever again. Did you hear me?" Sophia nodded her head, but I could see in her eyes that she was still afraid, as if she couldn't entirely believe that her nightmare was over. While she was bathing, I took the opportunity to check her room more closely. What I found filled me with a rage I had never felt in my 62 years of life. Underneath her bed were several empty plastic cups, as if she had been collecting water from the bathroom for days. In a drawer of her dresser, I found bits of stale bread wrapped in napkins, as if she had been saving them for when she got hungrier. My 7-year-old granddaughter had been living like a refugee in her own house, hiding food and water as if they were treasures. The image turned my stomach, and tears ran down my cheeks without me being able to stop them. How had Diane allowed things to reach this point? When had my daughter become such a cruel mother? When Sophia came out of the bath, I put one of her clean nightgowns on her that I found in the closet. It was too big for her, as if she had lost considerable weight in recent weeks. Her little arms and legs looked thinner than normal, and she had dark circles under her eyes that were not normal for a child her age. "Let's go to Grandma's house, my love," I told her as I gathered some of her things into a bag. I didn't want her to spend another minute in that house that had become her prison, but before we left, I needed evidence of what had been happening here. I took pictures of the room with the broken padlock, the hidden cups under the bed, and the general state of disarray in the house. While I packed Sophia's clothes, she curled up in my lap and began to tell me more details about what she had been experiencing. "Grandma, sometimes I hear Mom and Hank yelling in their room. They fight a lot about money, and then they leave and don't come back until very late. When they return, they smell weird, and their eyes are red." Her words confirmed my worst suspicions. Diane and Hank were involved in something much more serious than simple neglect. The strange smell, the red eyes, the fights over money, everything pointed to drug problems. My daughter had dragged my granddaughter into a world of addiction and abandonment that could have cost her her life. "Have they ever hurt you, sweetheart?" I asked her very carefully, trying not to scare her, but needing to know the complete truth. Sophia shook her head, but then she added something that chilled my blood. "They don't hit me, Grandma, but sometimes Hank yells at me really mean thing and calls me bad words, and Mom just cries and says I'm a burden to her." A burden. My beautiful 7-year-old granddaughter had been hearing that she was a burden to her own mother. The words hit me like punches, and I had to breathe deeply to keep from exploding with rage in front of her. No child should ever hear that they are a burden, especially from the person who should love them unconditionally. I finished packing her things and carried the bag out to my car. Sophia walked beside me, holding my hand, and for the first time all night, I saw a small smile on her face. I knew that being away from that house gave her immediate relief, but I also understood that the emotional damage she had suffered would take a long time to heal. When we arrived at my house, it was almost 3 o'clock in the morning. I made up the guest bed with the softest sheets I had, and I put her favorite teddy bear that she had brought from her room next to her. Sophia lay down and asked me to stay with her until she fell asleep. I sat on the edge of the bed and stroked her hair as her eyes slowly closed. "Grandma, can I have pancakes with you tomorrow?" she asked in a sleepy little voice that filled me with tenderness. "You can have breakfast, lunch, and dinner with me every day you want, my love," I replied, giving her a kiss on the forehead. A small smile appeared on her lips before she fell deeply asleep. That night I couldn't close my eyes. I stayed sitting in the living room, thinking about everything I had discovered. My daughter Diane had hit rock bottom in a way I never imagined possible. The sweet and loving girl I had raised had become a negligent mother who risked the life of her own daughter because of her drug problems and her toxic relationship with Hank. But as I processed the horrible reality, a plan also began to form in my mind. I wasn't going to allow Sophia to go back to that house ever. I would do whatever was necessary to gain legal custody of my granddaughter, even if it meant facing my own daughter in court. Sophia's well-being was more important than any family tie. At dawn, I called my sister Martha, who worked as a social worker in the County Department of Family Services. I told her everything that had happened during the night, and she confirmed that I had enough evidence to initiate legal proceedings immediately. She also recommended that I take Sophia to a doctor to document any evidence of neglect or mistreatment. Martha arrived at my house at 8 in the morning, and while Sophia slept, we reviewed all the photos I had taken and discussed the legal steps we should follow. She explained that the process would be long and difficult, but with the evidence we had, it was very likely that we would obtain temporary custody immediately. When Sophia woke up, I made her a full breakfast with pancakes, fruit, and orange juice. Seeing her eat with appetite and smile while telling me about a nice dream she had filled me with an even stronger determination. This child deserved a life full of love, security, and opportunity, not the hell she had been living. After breakfast, my phone rang. It was Diane, and her voice sounded hysterical and desperate. "Where is my daughter, Mum? I got home and she wasn't there. The door to her room was open and her things are missing." Her false concern made me sick, because I knew perfectly well that she had locked Sophia in for more than 12 hours without food or water. "She's with me, Diane, and she's going to stay here until you and Hank take responsibility for what you've done," I replied in a voice as cold as ice. There was a silence on the other end of the line, and then Diane started screaming that I was a nosy grandmother and that I had no right to take her daughter. "I have every right in the world when a 7-year-old child calls me crying because she's locked in, hungry and thirsty," I yelled back, feeling the rage burning inside me. Diane hung up the phone, but I knew this was only the beginning of a battle I was completely willing to fight to the end. 2 hours after Diane's call, I heard the sound of a car speeding up to my house. I looked out the window and saw Diane getting out of her beat-up green car, followed by Hank, who was staggering as if he were drunk or under the effects of some substance. His red eyes and disheveled appearance confirmed my worst suspicions about his condition. Sophia was playing in her room when she heard the agitated voices coming from the yard. She immediately ran to me and clung to my leg, trembling like a leaf. "Grandma, I don't want to go with them," she whispered to me with tears in her eyes, and I hugged her, protecting her with my whole body. "Open this damn door, you nosy old woman," Hank shouted from outside, pounding on the door with his fists. "Give us the kid back right now or we're calling the cops." His threats made me laugh, because that was exactly what I wanted them to do. The more of a scene they made, the more evidence I would have of their irresponsible behavior. "I'm not opening up until you calm down and we can talk like civilized adults," I shouted back from inside, keeping Sophia behind me. Diane began crying hysterically, screaming that I had stolen her daughter and that I was a manipulative grandmother who meddled where she wasn't wanted. But when I mentioned that I had pictures of the room with the padlock and of the entire house in a deplorable state, Diane's tone changed completely. Her hysterical crying turned into desperate pleas. "Please, Mum, give her back to me. I promise we'll change. Hank won't drink anymore, and I'll be a better mother, I swear." Her empty promises reminded me of all the previous times she had promised to change. Since she got together with Hank 3 years ago, Diane had been in a downward spiral of lies, drugs, and negligence. Every time I tried to help her, she would scream at me to mind my own business. Now that the consequences had arrived, she wanted me to forget everything as if nothing had happened. After an hour of screaming and threats, they finally left. But not before Hank yelled that this wasn't going to end here, and that he would get even with me. His threats didn't scare me, but they did make me realize that I needed to act fast to legally protect Sophia. The next day, Martha accompanied me to family court to file an emergency temporary custody request. Judge Edward Reynolds, an older man with grey hair and a severe expression, carefully reviewed all the photographs and documents we had prepared. When he saw the images of the room with the padlock, his face visibly hardened. We also presented the testimony of Dr. Robert Miller, who had examined Sophia that same morning. His medical report documented clear signs of mild malnutrition, dehydration, and severe emotional stress. The doctor had found that Sophia was underweight for her age and showed symptoms typical of prolonged parental neglect. The judge listened attentively as I recounted the events of that terrible night. I told him about Sophia's desperate call, about finding her locked in with a padlock, and about the deplorable conditions she was living in. My voice broke several times during the testimony, especially when I described the water cups hidden under her bed. Diane and Hank arrived late for the hearing, and it was obvious that they had been consuming alcohol or drugs before appearing before the judge. Diane was wearing a wrinkled and stained yellow dress, and her hair looked like it hadn't been combed in days. Hank had glassy eyes and couldn't stand straight as he spoke. When the judge asked them why they had locked Sophia in with a padlock, Diane began to stammer incoherent excuses. She said it had only been for one night, that they had had a family emergency, and that I was exaggerating everything to make them look bad. Her lies were so obvious that even the court-appointed lawyer assigned to her seemed embarrassed. Hank, for his part, started yelling that I was a bitter old woman who wanted to steal Diane's daughter out of spite. His hateful words and aggressive behavior only confirmed to the judge that these two individuals did not have the emotional or mental capacity to care for a 7-year-old child. The most impactful moment of the hearing came when the judge asked to speak with Sophia privately in his chambers. My granddaughter, dressed in a clean pink dress I had bought her that morning, entered timidly, holding my hand. The judge crouched down to her level and spoke to her in a soft, paternal voice. "Where do you feel safest, little one? With Mum or with Grandma?" he asked very gently. Sophia looked at me for approval, and when I smiled and nodded, she responded in a clear little voice. "With Grandma. I'm scared and hungry at Mum's house. Grandma gives me food and hugs me when I have nightmares." Those innocent yet devastating words sealed the fate of the hearing. The judge returned to his bench with a serious expression and announced that he was granting emergency temporary custody in my favor for an initial period of 6 months. Diane collapsed, crying in her chair, while Hank started shouting obscenities that caused the security guards to remove him from the courtroom. In addition to granting me custody, the judge ordered that Diane and Hank submit to immediate toxicological tests and complete a drug rehabilitation program before they could request supervised visits. He also ordered that the house be inspected by social services before considering any family reunification. When we left the courthouse, Sophia took my hand and asked if this meant she could stay with me forever. "It's not forever yet, my love, but you're going to be safe with me for a long time," I explained, as we walked towards my car. Her little eyes lit up with a joy I hadn't seen in months. That night, as I prepared dinner for the two of us, I received a call from my sister Nora, who lived in another state, but had heard about the situation through Martha. She offered me her complete support and told me that if I needed money for legal expenses or to care for Sophia, she was willing to help without hesitation. My family's solidarity filled me with hope, but it also made me reflect on how Diane had come to be so alone and lost. For years, she had rejected our help and had become increasingly isolated, especially after meeting Hank. Now I understood that her addiction had turned her into a person I no longer recognized. But as I watched Sophia eating calmly and telling me about the butterflies she had seen in my garden, I knew I had made the right decision. This child deserved to have a childhood full of love, stability, and opportunity. If Diane wanted to get her back someday, she would have to prove that she was willing to completely change her life. The following weeks were like a slow awakening for Sophia. Every morning I saw her a little more relaxed, a little more confident, like a flower that finally receives the sun after being in the shade for too long. We established a routine that gave her the security she had lost. Breakfast at 7 o'clock, games in the yard, lunch together, and in the afternoons I would read her stories while she drew at her new colouring table. But not everything was easy. During the nights, Sophia had terrible nightmares that made her wake up screaming. She would run to my room crying, trembling with fear, and tell me that she had dreamed she was locked in again and no one was coming to get her. Those nights I stayed awake hugging her, whispering lullabies until she fell back asleep. One afternoon, while organizing the legal papers on my desk, I found something that chilled my blood. Among Sophia's things that I had brought from her house, there was a drawing notebook that I hadn't seen before. When I opened it, I discovered pages full of drawings that revealed the true dimension of the horror my granddaughter had lived. In one of the drawings, there was a little girl locked in a dark room, crying behind a closed door. In another, the same girl was lying on a bed, while two large figures shouted outside her room. The colours she had used were all dark, black, brown, grey, as if her world had lost all joy and light. But the drawing that impacted me the most showed an older woman arriving in a white car in the rain. It was me, coming to rescue her that night. In this drawing, for the first time, she had used bright colours. Yellow for the light of my car, pink for my jacket, and green to represent hope. It was her way of processing the trauma, of making sense of that night that had changed her life forever. I took the drawings to Dr. Grace Miller, a child psychologist recommended by Sophia's pediatrician. Dr. Miller was a middle-aged woman with a warm smile who immediately made my granddaughter feel comfortable. After reviewing the drawings and talking with Sophia for several sessions, she confirmed what I already feared. My granddaughter suffered from post-traumatic stress caused by months of neglect and emotional abandonment. The doctor explained to me that children who have lived through survival situations develop defense mechanisms that can take years to heal. Sophia had learned to hide food, to stay quiet so as not to bother anyone, and not to express her needs because she had understood that she was a burden. However, the doctor also gave me hope. She told me that Sophia was a resilient child, and that with love, patience, and constant therapy, she could completely overcome the trauma. Children have an amazing capacity for healing when they feel safe and loved, she explained to me as she reviewed more drawings where Sophia had started using brighter colors. During this time, Diane tried to contact me several times. Sometimes she would call crying, asking for forgiveness and promising that she had stopped using drugs. Other times she would call furious, screaming that I was manipulative and that I had brainwashed Sophia into preferring me. Her erratic mood swings only confirmed that she was still under the influence of substances. The social worker assigned to the case, a young woman named Carmen, visited my house every 2 weeks to evaluate Sophia's progress. She was always impressed by the transformation she saw in my granddaughter. In her report for the second month, she wrote that Sophia had recovered the normal weight for her age and showed clear signs of emotional well-being. But the biggest test came when we had to face the first supervised visit with Diane. The meeting took place in the social services offices in a small room with toys and crayons. I waited outside while Sophia spent 2 hours with her mother under Carmen's supervision. When the visit ended, Sophia came out quiet and thoughtful. She didn't cry or get upset, but she also didn't show emotion when she saw Diane. It was as if she had created an emotional barrier to protect herself. In the car ride home, she asked me something that broke my heart. "Grandma, why does Mum smell weird like before?" Diane had arrived at the visit under the influence of some substance, trying to cover it up with perfume and mint gum. But children have a natural instinct to detect when something is not right with their parents. Sophia had learned to associate that strange smell with moments of abandonment and fear. Carmen documented everything in her report, including Diane's erratic behavior during the visit and her apparent state of intoxication. This meant that subsequent visits would be cancelled until Diane successfully completed a rehabilitation program, something that seemed very unlikely given her resistance to acknowledging that she had a problem. Meanwhile, Yuti, Hank, had completely disappeared. According to Diane's neighbors, he had left the house, taking several valuables, including the television and some appliances. Apparently, he had decided that a child and an addicted woman were too much responsibility for him. His abandonment, though cruel, was actually a blessing in disguise. One afternoon, while Sophia was playing in the yard with her new pink bike that I had bought her, I received an unexpected visit. It was Jason, Diane's younger brother, who lived in another city and had just found out about the whole situation. He arrived with tears in his eyes and asked for my forgiveness for not having been present when Diane began to deteriorate. Jason told me that he had tried to help Diane several times in the past, but she always rejected him and told him she didn't need his help. He explained that Hank had completely isolated Diane from the family, convincing her that we were her enemies and that he was the only one who truly understood her. It was a classic abuser tactic, isolating their victims from their support networks. When Sophia saw her Uncle Jason, she ran to hug him with a genuine joy that filled me with hope. It was the first time she had seen someone from Diane's family since she had come to live with me, and her positive reaction confirmed to me that not all family memories were contaminated by the trauma. Jason stayed for dinner with us, and during the meal, Sophia told him about her new school, about the friends she had made, and about the swimming lessons she had started taking on Saturdays. It was as if she was showing off to someone important how much she had grown and changed in these months. That night, after putting Sophia to bed, Jason and I talked at length about Diane and what we could do to help her without compromising Sophia's well-being. He offered me a financial commitment for the legal expenses and promised to visit Sophia regularly so that she would have a healthy connection with her mother's family. Before he left, Jason hugged me and said something I will never forget. "Thank you for saving my niece, Cecilia. Diane is my sister and I love her. But Sophia is innocent and deserves a chance to be happy. You are giving her that opportunity, and our family will always be grateful to you." His words filled me with a deep peace, because they confirmed that I had made the right decision to fight for Sophia's custody. I wasn't destroying a family. I was saving a child and giving her the opportunity to grow up in an environment full of love and stability. 6 months after obtaining temporary custody, the time came for the definitive hearing that would determine Sophia's permanent future. The nerves were gnawing at me, even though my attorney, Richard Vance, had assured me that we had a solid case. During these months, I had meticulously documented every aspect of Sophia's recovery, from her medical reports to her perfect school grades. Diane had completed only 3 weeks of the 6-month rehabilitation program before abandoning it. According to the clinic's report, she had missed multiple sessions and had tested positive in 2 drug tests during her short stay. Her lawyer tried to argue that she had been sick, but the medical tests proved otherwise. The morning of the hearing, while dressing Sophia in her favorite yellow dress, she asked me something that deeply moved me. "Grandma, if the judge says I can stay with you, does that mean you're going to be my mum now?" Her innocent words filled my eyes with tears, and I explained to her that I would always be her grandmother, but that I could take care of her as if I were her mum for as long as necessary. In the courtroom, Diane presented with a completely different appearance than 6 months ago. She had lost even more weight, her hair looked dull and neglected, and she had deep, dark circles that spoke of sleepless nights and substance use. Her green dress was wrinkled and stained, as if she had just put it on directly from the floor. The most devastating testimony came from Dr. Grace Miller, who presented a detailed report on Sophia's psychological progress. She explained to the judge that my granddaughter had shown an extraordinary improvement in these 6 months, but that any return to the previous toxic environment could cause a severe and irreversible setback in her emotional development. When Diane had the opportunity to speak, her words were a total disaster. She began by blaming me for stealing her daughter, then contradicted herself by saying she had been sick but was fine now, and finally ended up yelling at the judge that everyone was conspiring against her. Her erratic and aggressive behavior only confirmed that nothing had changed in these months. The social worker, Carmen, presented her final report, which included testimonials from Sophia's teachers, our neighbors, and the pediatrician who had been treating her. Everyone agreed that Sophia had flourished under my care and showed clear signs of emotional and physical stability that she hadn't had before. But the most important moment came when the judge asked to speak with Sophia privately again. This time, my granddaughter entered the judge's chambers with much more confidence than the first time. She had grown considerably in these months, not only physically but also emotionally. Her eyes no longer showed the constant fear they had before. When she came out of the judge's office, Sophia ran directly to me and hugged me tightly. The judge returned with a solemn but determined expression. After reviewing all the documents and testimonies, he announced that he was granting permanent custody of Sophia in my favor, with adoption rights if I so desired in the future. Diane collapsed crying when she heard the verdict, but her tears no longer moved me as they had before. She had had 6 months to prove that she could change, 6 months to fight for her daughter, and instead she had chosen drugs and self-destruction. The judge also ordered that Diane could not request visits until she successfully completed a rehabilitation program and remained sober for 1 full year. That night we celebrated at home with a special dinner. Sophia had asked for spaghetti and meatballs, her favorite dish, and for dessert, I made the chocolate cake she loved so much. While we were eating, she told me that she had told the judge that she felt safe with me and that she didn't want to live with her mum again until she was truly well. I was surprised by the maturity of her words. At 7 years old, Sophia had developed an emotional wisdom that many adults do not have. She understood that her mum was sick, but she also knew that she needed to protect herself. It was a painful lesson for such a small child, but necessary for her emotional survival. During the following weeks, I began the paperwork to officially enroll Sophia in a new school closer to my house. Her old school was in the neighborhood where she lived with Diane, and changing her environment completely was important for her healing process. I also signed her up for art classes on the weekends because I had noticed that drawing helped her process her emotions. One afternoon, while checking the mail, I found a letter from Diane. It was the first direct communication I had with her since the hearing. In the letter, she asked for forgiveness for all the damage she had caused and begged me to allow her to see Sophia, even if only for a few minutes. She said she had completely stopped using drugs and was living in a women's shelter. But when I called the shelter to verify her story, they told me that Diane had only been there for 3 days before leaving without notice. Apparently, she had had problems with other residents and had violated the rules about substance use inside the facility. Once again, Diane had lied to try to manipulate the situation. I showed the letter to my lawyer, who advised me to keep it as evidence of Diane's attempts to contact Sophia in violation of the court orders. He also suggested that I change my phone number and consider getting a restraining order if Diane continued to harass me. But despite all of Diane's lies and manipulations, a part of my heart still held out hope that she could truly recover someday. She was my daughter, after all, and I remembered the sweet and loving girl she had been before getting lost in the world of addictions. However, I also knew that my absolute priority was to protect Sophia. One night, while helping Sophia with her math homework, she asked me a question that left me speechless. "Grandma, do you think Mum will ever love me the way you do?" Her innocent question broke my heart because it revealed a deep wound that no child should carry. I explained to her very carefully that her mum loved her, but that sometimes people get sick in a way that prevents them from showing their love correctly. I told her that the love I had for her was strong and constant, and that she would never have to worry about losing it. That night, as I tucked her into bed, Sophia said something that filled me with hope and sadness at the same time. "Grandma, I think God sent me to you because he knew I needed a mom who wasn't sick." Her words, full of a wisdom that transcended her age, confirmed to me that this special child had found a way to make sense of her pain and find hope in the midst of adversity. That night, after she fell asleep, I stayed awake reflecting on everything we had been through together. In less than 1 year, Sophia had transformed my life as much as I had transformed hers. She had given me a renewed purpose and had taught me that true love sometimes requires making difficult and painful decisions. 1 year after obtaining permanent custody, life with Sophia had found a beautiful and stable rhythm. My granddaughter had grown so much physically and emotionally that sometimes I found it hard to believe she was the same terrified child I had rescued that rainy night. Her nightmares had decreased considerably, and now she woke up singing instead of screaming with fear. Sophia had developed a passion for painting that filled me with pride. Her drawings no longer showed dark rooms or menacing figures, but gardens full of flowers, bright rainbows, and happy families. Dr. Grace had explained to me that this change in her art was a clear sign that she had successfully processed much of her trauma. One Saturday morning, while we were having pancakes with syrup, Sophia asked me a question I had been waiting for weeks. "Grandma, can I call you Mum?" I was breathless for a moment, feeling the tears well up in my eyes. "Of course, my love," I replied, hugging her tightly against my chest. From that day on, Sophia began calling me Mum naturally and spontaneously. At first it felt strange to hear it, but gradually I realized it was the most natural thing in the world. I had assumed all the maternal roles in her life. I comforted her when she was sad, I took care of her when she was sick, and I guided her through every step of her growth. Sophia's transformation had also impacted my entire family. My sister Martha visited regularly and always commented on how incredible it was to see a child flourish in that way. My sister Nora had come from another state to meet Sophia and had stayed a whole week helping me fix up my granddaughter's room with new furniture and decorations. But not everything had been easy during this year. Diane had appeared several times at unexpected moments, always in a pitiful state that confirmed her addiction had worsened instead of improved. Once I found her standing outside Sophia's school, waiting for her to get out of class. I had to call the police and request a stricter restraining order. The last time I saw Diane was especially painful. She arrived at my house at 2 in the morning, desperately pounding on the door and screaming that she wanted to see her daughter. When I went out to talk to her, I could barely recognize her. She had lost so much weight that she looked like a skeleton. Her hair was dirty and matted, and her eyes had that empty look typical of people completely lost to drugs. "Mum, please, just let me see her for 5 minutes," she begged me, crying. "I promise this time I really will change. I'm going to quit everything and get my daughter back." But her empty promises no longer had any effect on me. I had heard the same words too many times, and each time Diane had proven that drugs were more important to her than her own daughter. I firmly told her that she couldn't see her until she completed real treatment and stayed sober for at least 1 year. Diane started screaming that I had turned Sophia against her, that I was a manipulative grandmother, and that someday she would get even with me. Her threats no longer scared me, but they deeply saddened me to see what my daughter had become. Sophia had heard the screaming from her room, and when Diane left, she came downstairs with tears in her eyes. "Mum, Cecilia, that sick lady was my mum from before," she asked me in a broken little voice. Her words broke my heart, because they confirmed that she no longer recognized Diane as her mother. I explained to her very carefully that yes, that was her biological mother, but that she was very sick, and that was why she couldn't take care of her properly. I assured her that it wasn't her fault and that she didn't have to worry about anything, because I would always be there to protect and love her. Sophia hugged me tightly and told me that she only wanted a mum who loved her and wasn't sick. As the months passed, Sophia began to excel academically in her new school. Her teachers constantly commented on how intelligent and diligent she was, and how she had developed a cheerful and sociable personality that was contagious to all her classmates. It was as if she had recovered all the years of childhood lost in a toxic environment. She had also begun to ask questions about my life and what it was like when Diane was little. I showed her photo albums from when Diane was a child, and Sophia was surprised to see how physically alike they were. "Mum, Cecilia, why did my mum from before change so much?" she asked me one afternoon while we looked at pictures of Diane at her high school graduation. I explained to her in an age-appropriate way that sometimes people make bad choices that hurt themselves and others. I told her that Diane had chosen to use substances that made her sick and caused her to change completely. Sophia listened attentively and then said something that filled me with pride. "I'm never going to take those bad things, Mum. I don't want to get sick like her." During this time, I also received news that filled me with hope. Jason, Diane's brother, called me to tell me that he had found a rehabilitation center specializing in severe addiction cases and that he was willing to pay for the complete treatment if Diane agreed to voluntarily admit herself. Jason had been looking for Diane for weeks, and he had finally found her living on the streets downtown. He told me that she was in terrible condition, but that for the first time in years, she had accepted that she needed help. The rehabilitation center had a 6-month program with 2 years of follow-up and a 70% success rate. Although a part of me wanted to cling to the hope that Diane could recover, I also knew that I couldn't allow that hope to risk Sophia's emotional stability. I told Jason that I completely supported his efforts to help Diane, but that Sophia would not have contact with her until she had completed the treatment and demonstrated long-term stability. One afternoon, while Sophia was playing in the park with her new school friends, I sat on a bench watching her and reflecting on everything we had lived through together. Seeing her genuine laugh, her rosy cheeks from the exercise, and the confidence with which she interacted with other children filled me with deep satisfaction. Sophia had found her place in the world, surrounded by love, stability, and opportunities that would allow her to develop her full potential. She was no longer the terrified child trembling in my lap, but a strong, intelligent little person full of dreams for the future. She had overcome a trauma that could have marked her entire life, and she had done it with a grace and resilience that inspired me every day. That night, while helping her with her science homework, Sophia surprised me with a declaration that filled my heart. "Mom Cecilia, when I grow up, I want to help children who are sad like I was before. I want to be a doctor for broken hearts, so that other children can be happy too." Her words confirmed to me that all the pain and legal battles had been worth it. Sophia had not only healed from her trauma, but she had found a way to transform her experience into a life purpose that could help other children in similar situations. 2 years after that conversation about helping other children, Sophia had grown into an extraordinary 10-year-old girl. Her personality had completely blossomed, showing a unique combination of compassion, intelligence, and determination that filled me with pride every day. Her grades were excellent. She had developed a natural talent for painting and had become the natural leader of her group of friends. One spring afternoon, while returning from her piano lesson, Sophia asked me a question I had been waiting for. "Mom Cecilia, do you think my mum from before has recovered from her illness yet?" Jason had been keeping me informed about Diane's progress at the rehabilitation center, and the news was hopeful for the first time in years. Diane had successfully completed the 6-month program and had remained sober for 8 additional months. According to Jason, she had gotten a part-time job at a flower shop, was living in a small but clean apartment, and religiously attended support meetings. For the first time in years, she seemed to have found genuine stability. The rehabilitation center had recommended that Diane write letters to Sophia as part of her healing process, without expecting a response, simply as a way to process her guilt and express her feelings. For the last few months, she had been sending weekly letters that I carefully read before deciding if they were appropriate for Sophia. The first letters had been full of desperate apologies and grandiose promises that reminded me of the manipulative Diane from before. But gradually, the tone had shifted towards something more mature and reflective. She began to write about her recovery process, about the things she had learned about herself, and about how proud she was of Sophia, without asking for anything in return. In her most recent letter, Diane had written something that deeply moved me. "My dear Sophia, every day I spend sober is a day that brings me closer to being the mother you deserve. I don't expect you to forgive me, and I don't even expect you to want to see me someday. I just want you to know that the love I feel for you is what keeps me strong when things get tough. Your Grandma Cecilia is an angel who saved you when I couldn't." After much reflection and several consultations with Dr. Grace, I decided that it was time to talk seriously with Sophia about the possibility of having some kind of controlled contact with Diane. I needed to know how my granddaughter felt about it, without pressuring her in any direction. One night, after dinner, we sat in her room and had a conversation I will remember forever. I explained that Diane had been working very hard to recover from her illness, and that she might be ready to meet her again, but only if Sophia wanted to and felt ready. Sophia listened attentively, playing with one of her dolls as she processed the information. After several minutes of silence, she looked at me with those intelligent eyes that so reminded me of mine and said, "Mom Cecilia, do you think she won't hurt me anymore?" Her direct question broke my heart, because it revealed that, despite her young age, she perfectly understood the risks involved. I assured her that I would never allow anyone to hurt her, and that any meeting with Diane would be in a safe place, with professional supervision, and that she could stop it at any time if she felt uncomfortable. I also explained that she didn't have to decide anything immediately, and could take all the time she needed to think. Sophia asked me to see some of the letters Diane had written, especially the most recent ones. As she read them, I could see how she processed her biological mother's words, asking mature questions about the meaning of certain phrases. "Mom Cecilia, why does she say she doesn't expect me to forgive her? Does that mean she did something very bad?" I explained carefully that Diane understood that she had made decisions that hurt her, and that she was now trying to be responsible for those decisions. I told her that forgiveness was something very personal, and that she didn't have to forgive anyone if she didn't feel ready or didn't want to. After 1 week of reflection, Sophia surprised me with her decision. "Mom, Cecilia, I think I want to meet the lady who was my mum before, but only if you are with me the whole time. And if she tries to take me, or makes me feel bad, we leave immediately." Her maturity and her ability to establish clear boundaries filled me with pride. I contacted Dr. Grace to organize the meeting in the safest possible way for Sophia. We decided it would be in the doctor's office, with her present throughout the entire meeting, and that it would last only 30 minutes for the first time. We also established clear signals that Sophia could use if she wanted to end the meeting early. The day of the meeting arrived faster than I expected. Sophia had dressed with special care, choosing her favorite lavender dress and the new sandals I had bought her the week before. During breakfast, she was quieter than usual, but she didn't seem anxious, just thoughtful. When we arrived at the office, Diane was already waiting in the reception area. Seeing her, I could barely contain my astonishment. It was as if she had gone back in time, 10 years. Diane had recovered a healthy weight. Her hair looked clean and well combed, and her eyes had a clarity I hadn't seen since before she met Hank. She was wearing a simple but elegant pale pink dress, and in her hands she held a small gift wrapped in shiny paper. When she saw Sophia, her eyes filled with tears, but she controlled herself admirably so as not to overwhelm her with overly intense emotions. "Hello, Sophia," Diane said in a soft, trembling voice. "You look so big and beautiful. You've grown so much, I barely recognize you." Sophia stayed close to me but responded politely. "Hello, my mom Cecilia says you are Diane, and you were my mum before when you were different." Sophia's direct honesty could have hurt anyone, but I saw how Diane took a deep breath and accepted the words with grace. "That's right, my love. I was your mum before, but I was very sick and couldn't take good care of you. That's why Grandma Cecilia became your mum, and she has done a wonderful job." For the next 30 minutes, I observed a cautious but respectful conversation between Diane and Sophia. Diane told her about her job at the flower shop, about the art classes she had started taking, and about the books she was reading. Sophia told her about her school, her friends, and her piano lessons. What impressed me the most was the difference in both of their body language. Diane maintained a respectful distance without trying to force physical contact or emotional intimacy. Sophia, for her part, gradually relaxed during the conversation, although she never moved away from my side. Towards the end of the meeting, Diane handed her the gift she had brought. It was a set of professional paints with brushes of different sizes and a special pad of watercolor paper. "Jason told me you like to paint, and I thought you could use this to create beautiful things," Diane said with a shy smile. Sophia accepted the gift and examined it with genuine interest. "Thank you, Diane. The paints are very pretty. I'm going to make a picture of Mom Cecilia's garden," my granddaughter replied with polite gratitude. Diane smiled with tears in her eyes, clearly moved by Sophia's kind response. When the meeting ended, Dr. Grace spoke briefly with the three of us to evaluate how we had felt. Diane expressed her gratitude for the opportunity to see Sophia and promised that she would respect any decision we made about future meetings. Sophia said that Diane seemed nicer than the sick lady, she remembered, but that she still needed time to think. In the car ride home, Sophia was quiet for several minutes before making a comment that surprised me. "Mom Cecilia, Diana looks like the pictures of when she was little that you showed me. She doesn't look like the lady who was yelling outside our house anymore." Her observation demonstrated the extraordinary capacity children have to perceive genuine changes in people. That night, while we were eating dinner, Sophia asked me to tell her more about what Diane was like when she was a child. I showed her more photos and told her stories about her biological mother before drugs ruined her life. Sophia listened with fascination, as if she were getting to know a completely new person. "Mom Cecilia, do you think Diane can be like the pictures again?" she asked me while looking at an image of Diane at 8 years old, smiling on a swing. I explained that people can change and heal, but it takes a lot of time and hard work, and that not everyone achieves it. Over the next 6 months, Diane and Sophia maintained monthly meetings in Dr. Grace's office. Each meeting lasted a little longer than the last, and gradually I could observe a new and careful relationship developing between them. Diane never pressured, never demanded. She simply presented herself consistently as a stable person who respected Sophia's boundaries. In the 5th meeting, something beautiful happened. Sophia had brought one of her paintings to show Diane, a picture of our house's garden full of colourful flowers and butterflies. Diane was speechless at her daughter's artistic talent, and with tears in her eyes she said, "Sophia, this is absolutely beautiful. You have a special gift that I hope you continue to develop your whole life." For the first time, Sophia smiled genuinely in Diane's presence and replied, "Thank you. Mom Cecilia says I inherited the love for art from you, because you also painted when you were young." Diane looked at me with gratitude for having kept that positive connection alive between them, despite everything that had happened. It was at that moment that Diane made a decision that profoundly impressed me. She told Sophia, "My love, I want you to know that Cecilia is your mum now, and she always will be. I lost that right when I couldn't take good care of you. But if you allow me, I would love to be your friend, someone who is here to support you and love you without asking for anything in return." Sophia considered her words carefully before responding, "Diane, does that mean you're not going to try to take me away from Mom Cecilia?" Diane firmly shook her head. "Never, my love. Mom Cecilia saved you when I couldn't, and she loves you more than I could ever show. I just want to be in your life in whatever way you allow me." That conversation marked a turning point in our family situation. Diane had done something that few people in her position do. She had put her daughter's needs above her own desires. She recognized that I had earned the right to be Sophia's mother, not through the courts, but through daily love, sacrifice, and dedication. During the summer, Diane asked permission to take Sophia to a children's art exhibit at the City Museum. After much deliberation, I decided to accompany the three of us. Seeing Diane interact with Sophia in a more relaxed environment allowed me to observe even deeper changes in her personality. Diane had developed a patience and sensitivity she had never had before. She listened attentively to every one of Sophia's comments about the paintings, asked her intelligent questions that stimulated her creativity, and encouraged her to express her own artistic opinions. It was like seeing a completely new person, someone who had learned to put the needs of others before her own. At the end of that afternoon at the museum, Sophia surprised me by asking if Diane could join us for ice cream. During those shared moments, I could see a new and healthy family dynamic developing naturally. Diane didn't try to compete with me for Sophia's affection, but complimented my maternal role in a respectful and appropriate way. That night, as I tucked Sophia into bed, she made a reflection that filled me with pride for her emotional maturity. Mom Cecilia, I think Diane is a good person now. She doesn't smell weird or have sad eyes like before. Do you think we can be friends like she said? I explained that relationships take time to develop, but that if she felt comfortable, we could continue seeing Diane occasionally. I also reiterated that she would always have the freedom to change her mind if something didn't feel right, and that I would always be her primary mum no matter what happened. 1 year after that first controlled meeting, the time came for an important decision. Diane had maintained her sobriety for 2 full years, had demonstrated consistent emotional and financial stability, and had respected all the boundaries we had established. Dr. Grace recommended that we consider allowing less supervised visits. Sophia, who was now 11 years old, had developed a genuinely affectionate relationship with Diane. She called her by her name, not Mum, but she spoke of her with affection and looked forward to their monthly meetings. She had found a healthy way to have 2 maternal figures in her life without internal conflict. During one of our nightly conversations, Sophia asked me a question I had been expecting. Mom Cecilia, did you forgive Diane for the bad things she did before? Her direct question made me reflect deeply on my own feelings toward my daughter. I explained that forgiveness is a long and complicated process, but that seeing Diane's genuine efforts to change, and especially seeing how respectful she had been of our relationship, I felt that I had forgiven her. I also told her that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting what happened, but choosing not to let the past control the future. Sophia's response surprised me with its wisdom. I forgave her too, Mom Cecilia, but I'm happy that you are my primary mom, because you will never abandon me or get sick like she did before. Diane can be my special friend, but you are my mum forever. Her words confirmed to me that we had navigated this complex situation in the right way. Sophia had managed to heal from her initial trauma, develop a healthy relationship with Diane, and maintain the emotional security of knowing that I was her stable and unwavering foundation. On the 2nd anniversary of our definitive custody, we organized a small family celebration. Diane had asked permission to be present, and for the first time, I felt it was appropriate to include her. Jason also came with his wife and children, creating a genuinely loving family atmosphere. During dinner, Diane asked permission to speak and uttered words I will never forget. I want to thank Cecilia for saving my daughter when I couldn't. Thank you for loving her when I was lost, for protecting her when I was a danger, and for allowing me to be part of her life again when I managed to find myself. Then she turned to Sophia with a trembling voice. My beautiful girl, you are the reason I was able to find the strength to heal. Every day I've been sober has been for you, with the hope of being worthy of being in your life, even in this small way. Cecilia is your real mum, and I am honored to be your friend. Sophia got up from her chair and hugged Diane, telling her, Thank you for getting well, Diane. I like having you as my special friend. Diane cried silently as she hugged her daughter. perfectly understanding that this was the greatest gift she could receive. That night, after everyone left, Sophia and I sat on the porch looking at the stars. "Mum Cecilia, do you think Diane is going to stay well forever?" she asked me with the natural concern of a child who had learned that adults sometimes fail. I explained honestly that I couldn't guarantee Diane's future, but I could promise her that I would always be there to protect her no matter what happened. I also told her that Diane had shown for 2 years that she was committed to her recovery, and that was a good sign. As I watched my granddaughter processing our conversation, I realized that we had achieved something extraordinary. We had taken a situation that could have destroyed a family and transformed it into something that, while different from the traditional, was full of love, respect, and healing. Sophia had grown into an extraordinary child who understood complex concepts like forgiveness, second chances, and the importance of healthy boundaries. Diane had found a way to be part of her daughter's life without risking her well-being, and I had discovered that my greatest legacy would not only be having raised Diane, but having saved and raised Sophia. When I tucked Sophia in that night, she told me something that perfectly summed up our journey. "Mom Cecilia, I think in the end we all won. You won a daughter who truly loves you. I won a mum who will never abandon me. And Diane won the opportunity to get to know the strong girl I became because of you." Her words filled my heart with a deep peace, knowing that after years of pain, struggle, and uncertainty, we had found our place in the world as an unconventional but authentic family, built on unconditional love, mutual sacrifice, and the hope that people can change when they find sufficient reasons to do so. 5 years after that family celebration, I am sitting in my garden in Queens, New York, watching Sophia practice piano in the living room. At 16 years old, she has become an extraordinary young woman who radiates confidence and compassion. Her fingers dance over the keys with a grace that fills me with pride, playing a melody that she herself composed and was inspired by our family story. Diane has remained sober for 7 consecutive years. She now manages her own flower shop downtown and has married a good man named Michael, who understands and respects our unique family dynamic. Sophia was the one who walked Diane down the aisle on her wedding day, not as her daughter, but as her dear friend who had witnessed her transformation. The relationship between Diane and Sophia has evolved into something beautiful and authentic. They see each other regularly, share their love for art, and Diane has found her place as a supportive figure in Sophia's life without ever trying to reclaim a role she lost years ago. Michael often comments that he has never seen a family dynamic so mature and full of mutual respect. Sophia is in her senior year of high school and has been accepted to several prestigious universities with full academic scholarships. She wants to study child psychology, fulfilling the dream she expressed when she was 7 years old of helping children with broken hearts. Her college application essay told our story, describing how a grandmother can become a mother, and how true love sometimes requires difficult decisions. 2 months ago, Sophia surprised me with a proposal that moved me to tears. "Mom Cecilia, I want to legally change my last name to include yours. I don't want to erase my history, but I want the world to officially know that you are my real mother." When we went to the courthouse to make the change, the same Judge Edward Reynolds, now retired, congratulated us for having created something beautiful from such difficult circumstances. The house has been the setting for many celebrations over the years. Graduations, birthdays, Sophia's piano concerts, and the monthly family dinners where Diane, Michael, Jason, and his children gather around our table. Sophia is the radiant center of these gatherings, connecting everyone with her genuine joy and her natural ability to make people feel valued and loved. Martha and Nora continue to be important pillars in our lives. Martha retired last year and now helps Sophia with her volunteer projects at a shelter for children in crisis. Nora comes to visit us every Christmas and always comments on how incredible it is to see a family that was formed through love instead of just genetics. Dr. Grace has become more of a family friend than a therapist. Sophia visits her occasionally, not because she needs therapy, but because she values her advice on how to help other young people who have gone through similar traumas. The doctor often uses our story as an example in conferences on child resilience and the importance of family support networks. One recent afternoon, while organizing photo albums, I found the drawings Sophia had made when she was 7 years old. I decided to show them to her, and we sat together comparing those dark and terrified images with the vibrant, hope-filled paintings she creates now. "Mom Cecilia, it's incredible to see how my inner world changed," she told me, while holding a drawing of herself locked in that dark room. Sophia has developed an emotional wisdom that often surprises me. When her friends ask her about her unconventional family, she explains naturally that love comes in many forms, and that she was lucky enough to have a grandmother who loved her enough to become her mother, and a biological mother who loved her enough to completely change her life. 3 weeks ago, Diane asked to speak with me alone, with tears in her eyes. She told me, "Cecilia, I can never repay you for what you did for Sophia and for me. You gave me the chance to get to know the incredible young woman my daughter became, and you allowed me to be part of her life, despite all the damage I caused. I am a different woman today, because you showed me what unconditional love meant." Our conversation made me reflect on forgiveness and redemption. Diane had demonstrated that people can fundamentally change when they find reasons powerful enough to do so. Her love for Sophia had been that reason, and my willingness to give her a second chance had made her transformation possible. This morning, as I prepared breakfast, Sophia came downstairs with a radiant smile and hugged me, as she has every morning for the last 9 years. "Mom Cecilia, do you know what day it is today?" she asked me with bright eyes. It was the 9th anniversary of the night that changed our lives forever, the night that a desperate phone call united us permanently. "I want to celebrate this day as our true Mother's Day," Sophia told me, "because it was the day you chose to be my mum, not out of obligation or by accident, but out of pure love." Her words filled my heart with a joy I didn't know was possible to feel at my 71 years old. As I write these lines in my journal, looking toward the future, I know that Sophia is destined to do great things in this world. She will carry with her the lessons of resilience, compassion, and hope that we learned together during these years. And when she helps other children who have lost their way, she will give them the same thing I gave her: unconditional love, and the promise that there will always be someone willing to fight for them. Our story began with a desperate call in the middle of the night, but it became a testament to the transformative power of love, the importance of second chances, and the truth that the strongest families are not always those who are born, but those who are chosen and built it day by day with dedication, sacrifice, and unwavering hope.